Hey everyone, Sleepy Reader here. Wanted to give you my thoughts on the Kamandi challenge. Overall, I enjoyed this more than I thought I would because I thought it would be a kind of pointless exercising in mining Kamandi. And I suppose, it still could end up that way, but it had a certain fun and charm to it. Essentially, this issue is a bit of a revisioning, retelling, rejiggering of Kamandi #1, but maybe not even all of Kamandi #1, which was a much shorter comic book than this, but had much more going on. Maybe we've covered about 2/3 or 3/4 of Kamandi #1 in this issue, and it contained 2 stories or 2 chapters, one by Dan DiDio and Keith Giffen, and the other by Dan Abnett and Dale Eaglesham. And the art in both was very satisfying, although, nothing can compare to Kirby, so that's always going to be a problem. But, what DiDio did in his writing part was ambitious, but maybe out of sync, if you will, or not quite getting it. So what we have, this is going to have spoilers. So what we had here was Kamandi, or a boy, an unnamed boy, living in an artificial environment where everyone is actually a robot, including Jack Kirby there. I kind of question whether Jack Kirby would say, "Don't take no crap" from those teachers. I'm not sure if he talked that way. I thought he was a little, despite being a tough guy, I don't think he used that kind of language or spoke with that kind of grammar. But I could be wrong. Anyway, after a short setup of this kind of idyllic little village, which also has a kind of creepy feeling to it, then we get the attack of animals, mostly rats, and we see that everyone else is armed, and eventually realize they're all robots fighting to protect Kamandi. So this is all an artificial environment to protect this one last boy on Earth. And then everything's blown up. We see him all ripped up, so we kind of get a sense of how Kamandi ended up in those ripped jeans or ripped blue pants that he's always worn. And then he's pushed through some kind of portal. And this is where things really, I would already question the idea that Kamandi was raised in this artificial environment. Yeah, I guess you could argue that Jack Kirby might have hinted at that, but I don't think so. But anyway, it's an interesting updating. But then things get really wonky when his grandmother, I think Kamandi always talked about being raised by his grandfather, but his grandmother pushes him through a portal and then says, "Leave my grandson alone." Boom, there's some kind of explosion. I think maybe the grandmother robot exploded and blew up all the people trying to catch Kamandi. They did mention there was some kind of, I think the rats mentioned there was some kind of bounty on his head or something, which that confused me because it made me think maybe this takes place afterwards and Kamandi's memories have been wiped, and the animal kingdoms are after him because they know him and want him for something. But then we just get, I guess, what's kind of looks like a collage of different adventures, and then Kamandi wakes up in the land of the tigers, where he is going to be a gladiator, a fight in blood sports for the entertainment of Prince Tufton. And this maybe mixes up some elements from, can't remember if it was Kamandi 2, 3, or 4. There is a Kamandi 1 where he has to fight in a gladiatorial ring against a creature kind of like this. But it makes no sense how he got here. They show Dr. Canis and stuff, and then remember Kamandi. But anyway, then he has a big gladiatorial fight, and for the entertainment of Prince Tufton, and they realize he's more intelligent than the regular human being, take him off to Dr. Canis to to train him. And so all of that is roughly stuff that happens in issue 1 of Kamandi, with mixing in a little bit from other issues. But then what's all this stuff here, as if a bunch of time has passed and he's had a bunch of adventures? Or is this prefiguring? Because that's Dr. Canis. That is probably Tufton there. Or is that Tufton? I don't know. Giant ape. It's all very muddled. Was it all just muddled by Dan DiDio, and Dan Abnett just kind of ignores that? So we get Dr. Canis beginning to suspect that Kamandi is more than the regular human is these days, although it's much slower for him to gain any respect for Kamandi than it would be in the original books. But and then we bring in the nuclear warhead, which I believe was in issue 1 of Kamandi also. And we end with our cliffhanger that that the Tigers are about to blow up the nuclear warhead, which is, I think, a twist on the way Kamandi number 1 kind of wraps up, where Kamandi, I believe, maybe I should go back and check, but Kamandi threatens to blow up a nuclear warhead as a way of proving himself in some way. Or is it something, oh boy, now I'm realizing I don't recall Kamandi number 1 as clearly as I thought. If I was smart and did my homework, I would have reread it. I have it digitally because my physical copies are all packed up in my kind of limbo of my moving between houses. But anyway, my basic sense is a kind of reimagining of the beginning of Kamandi's saga, his epic, or his journey in serialized form. But the Dan Abnett part, as you would imagine, seems more solid than the Dan DiDio part. Dale Eaglesham's art really won me over. Not at all like Kirby. I think he was smart not to go Kirby at all. But very imaginative, very good at capturing kind of the big scope and some kind of cross between animal and human behavior and all of that. Really working at the top of his form, this artist. I've seen stuff by Dale that I really loved and other stuff that I thought was just, fulfilling a job. And this definitely feels like a labor of love. So the art definitely made it worth it for me. The kind of fun of looking at it and saying, hey, Kamandi was different the other time. Which ways is it different? So I'm definitely going to probably read Kamandi number 1 and then reread this again. And see what I catch, see what I can see. To see an artist really working hard like Eaglesham is to give his own vision of Kamandi's world. It'll feel kind of very inconsistent as we move to different artists. If those artists want to give their own vision, like Eaglesham is giving us different costume designs and ways of picturing these humanized tigers, near the end where we get Great Caesar with his giant beard. Where is he at? That was pretty wonderful, but very different for Kirby. And look at these giant muscular elephants. There's Great Caesar, I think, with a giant long beard. I really like that. My biggest, thing is that maybe this will shift as different writers take over it. But at this point, maybe because of the point at which DiDio set it up, we're starting from the beginning again. It's not like a cool sequel to Kamandi. It's just a redo of Kamandi, a revisioning, which is interesting in itself, but not very ambitious. Not something Kirby himself, I don't think, would just redo what his previous work or redo someone else's previous work without, And I suppose they could go to all kinds of new, interesting places with it. So it's still, I'm more excited for Kamandi Challenge number 2 than I was previously. It's written by Peter J. Tomasi, so that might be really interesting. It's going to be drawn by Neil Adams, whose modern artwork is very odd feeling. And Adams tried to take on the New Gods in his recent Superman comic that he did, and his version of the New Gods was odd feeling. His attempt to do Kirby was strange. Maybe he'll do a better job with Kamandi. Certainly would have been fascinating to see, the Neil Adams of 1972 draw Kamandi. That would have been really interesting. Maybe Neil Adams of modern day will be interesting too. But yeah, one can also expect things to get more garbled as they progress. I would assume more sort of glitches. But it's weird how Dan DiDio introduces this glitchy, confusing discontinuity right in his section. The other thing I would question is, Kamandi is really good with weapons and fighting, and if he was raised just in this idyllic childhood, maybe he wouldn't be, or maybe all these robots were trained to train him. And in the Kamandi #1 by Kirby starts right after Kamandi's grandfather has died, the last other human being that he knew. So that has kind of a different feel to it than thinking that all these robots who weren't really his grandparents or relatives or anything had died. I suppose he still felt love and affection for them. So, overall, just interesting for a Kamandi fan. Secretly wish there could have been a Bruce Timm illustrated issue, because Bruce Timm certainly captures a certain Kirby flavor, and there's something appealing about the simpler style to go with this story. If you haven't seen the Kamandi video I did ages and ages ago, I consider Kamandi maybe one of the greatest kind of boys' adventure stories ever done. So anyway, I'll talk to you all again soon. Bye-bye.